According to a new poll that was released by Coefficient, AOC is the face of the Democratic Party. In fact, it's not even close.
AOC, when she's focusing on economic populism, is a very good spokesperson for that. So that's terrific. So that's good news. And by the way, if she runs, Schumer will retire. He's not going to get embarrassed and lose. Right now, she's at 55% against Chuck Schumer.
Don't let them trick us into thinking we are enemies. Don't let them trick us into thinking we can be separated into rural and urban, black and white and Latino. We are one. Miracles start with mustard seeds. And that is what each and every one of you represent today. Small miracles of faith in ourselves, in each other, and in the refusal to give up.
Well, that's a snippet of a video that Representative Alexandria-Ocasio Cortez released just last month, and it has been seen by many as a sign that she intends to run for president in 2028. Cenk, do you think that's the case?
So look, we did a poll on the website tyt.com. Should she run for Chuck Schumer's seat or run for president? So what's she gonna do? I have no insider knowledge. What do I think she should do? I think she should primary Schumer. I agree with our viewers at tyt.com.
Nice.
So we'll talk about the upsides and downsides of both, but there's something she could do that would be super helpful in getting the movement further along.
Now, according to a new poll that was released by Coefficient, AOC is the face of the Democratic Party. In fact, it's not even close. Take a look at this. So 26% of respondents said that AOC is in fact the face of the Democratic Party. She's tied with no one. Honestly, I fall in the no one category. I don't know if she's really the face of the Democratic Party. It's leaderless at the current moment. So I guess, I don't think there's a current leader. In terms of face of the Democratic Party, maybe, but she's, so in third place is other with 22% of the votes. After that comes a list of high profile Democrats, and we'll list them from most to least votes in this poll. So starting with Bernie Sanders, then Jasmine Crockett, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, who actually tied with Hakeem Jeffries, Cory Booker, and in last place, luckily, Gavin Newsom.
So you gotta like that, Anna. Bernie's at 12% and Gavin's at 2%.
Yummy in my tummy. Yeah. Mismanaged taxpayer revenue in the state of California so poorly, I mean, like so badly, that he's now cutting benefits in the state's Medicaid program. And on top of that, he wants Medicaid recipients in the state to pay $100 a month premium. He's a scumbag. Go ahead, Cenk.
Okay, that was random.
Yeah.
All right, so no, look, the party clearly has no leader now, and that's not a bad thing. That's what primaries are for. So, and this is the time to prove yourself. So Bernie and AOC have, in a sense, gone out there and taken the lead. And I love that they took the initiative, and they proved that they're popular by having 20,000, 30,000, 36,000 people show up at these rallies. Now she's doing great in the polling, and that makes a lot of sense. Now, what she's gonna do with it is the next question, and what direction is she gonna go, both politically and policy-wise, right? So policy-wise, keeping it real, I think she did too much culture wars in the past.
Agreed, yeah.
But now she seemed to be signaling that she's not gonna do culture wars anymore. And because she's such a star, a lot of people on the left are saying, oh, that's okay. We love culture wars and we want to do it, but if you're not doing it, we still are gonna cheerlead for you. Great, no problem, okay?
Why are you under the impression that she's moving away from culture wars?
I saw interviews where she did very long word salads that at the end meant, I'm not doing culture wars anymore. Okay, and hosts who love culture wars were like, "Oh my God, you're so brilliant for saying that. That's amazing."
Okay, all right. I mean,
but I'll take it.
I'll take it too. Absolutely, yeah.
I just want people to go in the right direction. So, an AOC, when she's focusing on economic populism, is a very good spokesperson for that. So that's terrific. So that's good news that she's headed in the right direction. Now, in terms of the politics, electoral politics, oh my God, unseating Schumer and becoming a senator from New York would be enormously helpful, because you need someone in the Senate to be able to keep introducing this legislation, and you need momentum in the Senate. So it's been Bernie by himself for so long, and then you had Elizabeth Warren, who half supported his policies, at least in the Senate, and kind of Merkley, like we stretch and stretch to find anyone else who might help. So having AOC there would be powerful. And then you get rid of Chuck Schumer. And by the way, if she runs, Schumer will retire. He's not going to get embarrassed and lose. He's right now, she's at 55% against Chuck Schumer.
Yeah, you know, whether she intends to run for that Senate seat or for president, either in 2028 or in the future, I would say the biggest piece of advice I would give AOC is to get herself a good foreign policy advisor, because that's the area where she flails quite a bit and gets a lot of backlash from the left specifically.
Yeah, I don't think that it's an advisor. I think what she's trying to do is, okay, our job's to be honest. So I think she's trying to walk the line.
Don't walk the line.
So, and I think that that's a mistake. That's why I think running for president is not a great idea. I don't think she's gonna win and then we lose a Senate seat for no reason and have a corporatist like Chuck Schumer in. She could be a perfectly great senator. There's nothing wrong with that. But if she tries to walk the line, what she's gonna do is what she did at the DNC. Oh my God, establishment Democrats are great. Kamala Harris is wonderful on Gaza. Oh my God, I'm good friends with everyone in the Democratic Party. And if you guys are pro-Israel's genocide, I'm not for it, but hey, I think it's great that you guys are for. No, don't do that.
Don't do that,
right? And it isn't about Israel and Gaza, it's about authenticity. And so do you have an actual opinion and are you gonna fight for it? So that's always been my top concern. And so, no advisor is going to help her through that. If she wanted the right advisors, she would have just kept the co-founders of the Justice Democrats, not me, Shoykot and Corbin Trent.
Yep.
Those are the guys who helped her win the race. Those are the guys who helped put Green New Deal on the map and help her with her career. But she's not going to go back to them because the establishment would be mad at her and she wants to walk the line.
So believe it or not, James Carville, of all people, was asked about the poll that we just shared details about. And he's not really a fan of AOC, as we've previously shared with you, but even he admitted that if push came to shove, he'd support her. Take a look.
I don't think the party is in near as bad shape as it's being portrayed to be. Look, we lost the election. I don't like the party. I don't blame the party reputation for being low, but I think that if AOC wants to run for president, she gets the nominee, and God bless you, you are the leader of the Democratic Party. Whoever gets that nomination is going to be it. And that's all I'm waiting on.
Well, here we backed into some intra-party news. You heard it here first. James Carville, once a critic of the AOC podcast landscape, now says, if you win, you win, and you got his support.
If you win, you win.
And look, conservatives are worried, believe it or not, okay? They're concerned about her charisma and her fundraising prowess and how she could be a serious contender in 2028. If you don't believe me, I'll show you the proof.
But I would watch out for her. I mean, she's pulling in tens of thousands of people.
And raising a lot of money.
Yes, quarter one, 2 times any other quarter amount she'd raised at 9.6 million. And that, she was already a prolific fundraiser. She's out raising herself now.
She raised the most money of any member in Congress in the last quarter. She's getting the biggest crowds.
I have always said, do not underestimate. People write me, by the way, they think that I support AOC. I don't like AOC, but I can recognize raw talent.
Yep.
Raw political talent when I see it. AOC is a person who understands her base, who understands the leftist populist streak that runs through that party.
Bernie and AOC, I think, have learned from the last 4 or 5 years in politics and are not leading with identity messaging in a way that I think AOC genuinely did struggle with. Ryan documents that in some of his book. Like, that really was a stumbling block for some left populists. But I think, and maybe the right is underestimating this, they have learned from that.
Look, I really hope that is the case. Because honestly, at this point, it's not just about Republicans, it's about Democratic voters who are sick and tired of the identity politics. I find it repulsive at this point. I do, I'm repulsed by it, sorry. All it's done is divide this country in the worst possible ways. Fractured the Democratic base significantly, essentially taught people within the same party to hate each other. Like, it's insane. So like, if they've learned those lessons, I really hope that's the case, and she'll have my backing entirely.
Well, one upside of if she's the candidate is then the radical left that said, no, you have to be maximalist and you have to agree with the most extreme ideology 100%.
Oh, they're gonna like lose it.
No, they're not. What's gonna happen is, because they're ass kissers. So what's gonna happen is when AOC says we're not doing identity politics anymore, they're like, oh, we never liked identity politics. You know what's with all this transport stuff? You know, there's only 10 people in the NCAAs that are transgendered. You know, because as long as the leader is saying it, and AOC is saying it, we love it.
We have to make note of the time and date of this prediction in case it comes true, because if it does come true, that would be hilarious.
I'm telling you right now, I know those guys. Those guys are like, hey, if I think I can gain something, I'll attack someone. If I think I can gain someone, I'll kiss someone's ass, right?
Totally.
So, and they'll pretend, by the way, they'll pretend they were never for identity politics. It's gonna be awesome.
Just think about the most vociferous Kamala Harris supporters in the last election cycle. I mean, it's amazing because they really care about what's happening in Gaza. Until Kamala Harris, who's part of the Biden administration, which oversaw the slaughter of tens of thousands of Palestinians in Gaza, is running for president.
Yeah, so I'm gonna get back to AOC in a second, but I just want to be clear, I'm saying this every time now. When I say radical left, it's some from the far left and some from the former moderates, right? The rad libs. And so the rad libs and some on the far left agree on identity politics. So the rad libs will be like, oh yeah, Kamala's positions might be bad, but she's a black woman, okay? So you're not allowed to disagree with her. Shut your mouth, right? That kind of nonsense.
They're the same group.
Yeah, so whatever. Like, but those guys, the minute that you've got someone in power in the Democratic Party, those are exactly the people that will rally and go, you know what? You're not allowed to do identity politics anymore because a Latina woman, a Latinx, no, we're not doing that anymore. A Latina has said that we're not doing it anymore, so you're not allowed to do it, okay? I guarantee it. So anyways, I don't think she's gonna be the candidate, so we're not gonna get to see that, although it would be beautiful, okay? But you can cross our fingers. It's got me rooting for AOC on that count. All right, now, back to AOC at its core, I agree with Carville. Whoever wins, wins, right? And Carville is the kind of guy who wants to win, right? And so I think he means it, that if AOC wins, then that's our Democratic candidate, and I want Democrats to win. I don't think that's a controversial comment, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm not canceling AOC over her DNC speech. Right, so
I hold it against her.
I hold it, yeah.
For sure.
I didn't like it, right? And and it's a mark against her, but that doesn't define her whole career. If we don't want people canceling folks based on disagreements, so then we've got to do likewise, right?
But also a line that the rad libs love: be better.
Yeah, on that issue, obviously be better. But then she, in the beginning, she was one of the first to speak out for Palestinians. So it's a mixed bag, guys. Let's be fair to everyone, okay? And then the right wing, I think that they're half trolling, right? I think that they're thinking, oh yeah, no. I think half of them are mean it, and some of the ones that we showed, but half of them are like, oh yeah, pick AOC, we're gonna beat her. And I'm like, you better be careful what you wish for, especially if she's left identity politics and she just goes to economic populism. That's a winning strategy.
She needs more runway. So I do think that if she ran for president in 2028, it would be a tough hill to climb because there's not enough runway to escape the identity politics identity that she took on over the last few years, Yeah. It's kind of like Kamala Harris. It's like you fed into a lot of that crap, especially in 2020 and beyond. Just because you've decided to stop messaging on that stuff in the 3 months you ran for president doesn't mean that it's enough time for that message to get across to people.
And obviously it brings up an issue of authenticity,
yeah,
right?
100%.
Because when Anna said I prefer to be called a woman and not a birthing person, everybody flipped out. It's like nobody ever says birthing person anyway. AOC did on CNN.
Yeah.
So she was the one saying on the issue of abortion, We should just call them birthing people. And she did on CNN. So now you're gonna walk that back. I'm glad you're walking it back, but I do wonder why you're walking it back, right? So that, but anyways, I always take yes for an answer. So lastly, on establishment media, so far they've been fangirling her. And if you're wondering why, when they certainly didn't do that for Bernie and they haven't done that for any other progressive, because they also see her walking the line, right?
Oh, totally.
Like I'm
a little worried about that, actually.
That goes to my point here. That's why I'm not being like, yay, AOC, like hold on, let's see. Because I remember when I was backing Obama in 2008, right, against Hillary Clinton in the primaries, I was shocked that mainstream media was totally open to it. Because normally they'd be like, Hillary's God, the Clintons are God, establishment is God. And they were totally open to Barack Obama. And I was like, huh, that's a curious ally, but I'll take it, right? But it turns out they knew something I didn't know.
Maybe they knew about the Citibank bribes.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I do know that they had a sense that Barack Obama wasn't gonna bring you real change.
Yeah.
That he was gonna keep the status quo. So that's why they didn't mind him and they gave him a lot of positive coverage. And now when I see them giving positive coverage to AOC, I'm like, it doesn't mean that she's doing anything wrong, but I am worried about it, right?
Yeah.
So jury's out, it's okay. Jury's out on everyone, right? Who knows who's gonna run in 2028? But for me, I would say, just take the win, take the New York Senate seat, knock out Chuck Schumer. That's an indisputably good win for everyone on the left.
Agreed.
It's not just that we need to overcome, I think, the stink. It's that, but.
By the way, if that is not a Democrat's slogan in 2028, something has gone terribly wrong. Overcome the stink. If I don't have that on a bumper sticker,
it's compelling. But it's
compelling.
Jon Stewart sat down with Pod Save America hosts Jon Favreau and Jon Lovett to talk about the Democrats' epic failures in 2024 and the Biden team's decision to cover up his obvious mental decline, which led to Jon Stewart suggesting that the slogan for 2028 should be overcome the stink. We'll hear more from the Johns, all three of them first. But first, Cenk, is that a winning slogan?
Yeah, I wouldn't go in that direction. I think they have that issue, but I wouldn't go that way. But I think they're having a super important conversation. And Jon Stewart keeps forcing the Democrats into uncomfortable conversations, which I love, because you can't get to a better place until you have those tough conversations. Now, there's a lot that was said there that I agree with and some that I don't agree with, including something else that Jon Lovett said, who you just saw there. So I want to come back to that in a minute. But Jordan, tell us more.
So Jon also talked about the Democrats' unwillingness to challenge Biden in 2024, aside from Cenk, Marianne Williamson, and Dean Phillips, and obviously the subsequent loss to Trump. Jon Stewart compared the harm to the horrible failure to recognize Biden's shortcomings and the status of the Democratic Party and what the Iraq War did to Republicans. Take a look.
The Iraq War for the Republicans turned out to be, in some respects, an extinction event. You know, if you remember correctly, like they were all behind. A lot of Democrats voted for it too, but that whole global war on terror and the way that it was begun and the weapons of mass destruction and all those things, without them realizing it, I think, was the last gasp of that status quo republicanism and really set the stage for Donald Trump. And I think this event for Democrats will have a similar effect in that it has sown the seeds for a real, and it's an opportunity for an interesting reinvention of what this Democratic Party can be. I actually think there should be excitement, not trepidation, around what this is. But it's going to come from someone outside of it. I think anybody that has any of that stink on them is not going to be particularly successful. It felt like the last gasp of the status quo Democratic Party.
Now, in response, Jon Lovett argued that the Democratic Party is filled with many people who aren't comfortable rocking the boat. Take a look.
I think on the Democratic side, we got a lot of front of the classroom raise their hand, please the teacher types. We got a lot of, we do. We got a lot of
teachers' pets. The Democratic Party is teachers' pets.
A lot of front of the classroom kids.
A lot of hall monitors too.
And like the front of the classroom kids, they are the people you want running the student council, right? You do.
Are they though?
They take it. They can be frustrating. They can be annoying, but they show up. They do the work.
They generally do what the teachers want, not what the students want.
So there's a couple ways of looking at it, Cenk. I'm curious which side you fall on. What do you want to see in the Democratic Party?
Yeah, unsurprisingly, I'm 100% on Jon Stewart's side. I think it's a great moment for the Democratic Party. I think the old leadership and the establishment were a disaster. And they've been destroying this Democratic Party, not just recently, but for decades. Literally chapter 4 of my book, Justice is Coming, about how the Democratic Party got captured by corporate interests, and their leadership over the last 40 years has been playing good cop, bad cop with the Republicans, serving their donors and never their voters. They betray their base at every turn. It's time to redo the Democratic Party. So I have strong feelings about that. We can come back to that as well. But there's something that annoys me, guys, and I'm curious what you guys think about it. So now, after the election's over, John Lovett's telling me about how the Democrats are the kids that are trying to please the teacher sitting in the front of the class, and then Jon Favreau says, like hall monitors, etc. Right? But when we were saying that before the election, we got nothing but pushback, including sometimes by those guys, right? And then John Lovett explained it a little bit later. He said this. I don't want to be somebody suddenly having the words we're saying taken out of context and all of a sudden be part of the case against Joe Biden. He's explaining why he did not speak out against Joe Biden, even though he did think he was too old. And all of a sudden be part of the case against Joe Biden from the right that would use any person criticizing Joe Biden from the left as a weapon against them. So look, on the one hand, I understand that logic, and it's the logic that everyone uses to make sure that no one ever criticizes a Democratic leader, which is, well, if somebody from the left says it, then it's going to get amplified, and then the right wing is going to use it for their narrative that maybe Biden is too old. But under that logic, guys, you never ever criticize any Democratic leader. So power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the Democratic voters, because of the propaganda of MSNBC and so many other left-wing media outlets, said, bow your head, always obey Democratic leaders. And if you ever question them, you're helping the right wing. So this is what gets me to my issue here that I want to ask you guys about. So what am I supposed to do with the guys like the Pod Save America guys? No personal beef at all. They're good guys. I've talked to them a couple of times, smart guys, etc. And I'll take yes for an answer, etc. But am I supposed to just go like, oh, okay, yeah. Now we're like, I'm supposed to believe that in the next elections, they're not gonna do the same exact thing? And like, I got yelled at by all the hall monitors, and now all of a sudden they're laughing about the hall monitors as if they're bothered by them. Like, so am I just supposed to be a good, like, okay, I'll take it, I'll eat it. We'll just pretend that this is like, they knew it all along and everybody's a good guy. I don't know, on a personal level it bothers me, that's why I'm bringing it up here. But then later, way more importantly, we'll talk about the effect it has going forward. But Jackson, what do you think?
Well, I think, whether it's Pod Save America or anybody who's a Democratic insider or part of that world, it's at this point, it's up to them to change and adapt their approach if they want to stay relevant. Because as was pointed out, that old guard of the Democratic Party's done. And outside of corruption, a lot of it's really just as simple and straightforward as so many of the politicians who have held elected office have, they're 80, they're 75, their time has come and gone. Their approach just doesn't work anymore. And that Bill Clinton approach, it sold for a little bit because the economy was overall stronger at the time. That vision could still go a long way in terms of expanding the business sector because it hadn't yet really crippled, the middle class as much as it did after the Obama era. Really until Trump got in office, the Democrats hadn't had to do that much different because they could still win elections. But then Trump came along and there was just the assumption that people won't do this. And that was the assumption in this last election. Now, we already had Trump once, so there's no way that people are gonna do this again. But at the end of the day, the biggest problem with the Democratic establishment, yeah, there's messaging and all of that. But the biggest issue is their lack of deliverance on things that really make a difference in people's lives. People can't afford anything. If that weren't the case, then Trumpism wouldn't have sold the way that it has.
I want to point out the PodSafe guys did an episode the day after the debate. And they were saying, no, just throw in the towel. It's over. This isn't happening. And part of me is like, yeah, okay, good on them. There were many Democrats and many Democrats in the media who attacked them for that. And there were many, many Democrats who refused to acknowledge what we all saw, what we all witnessed. They did it the very next day. They recorded an episode that night. So in one way you could say, yeah, they were out there saying this is bad. I would argue you should have been saying that in 2019, 2020, because we saw that then. It only got worse. The risk signs were there. So sure, yes, that's good. They were doing it, but also shouldn't have even been in that position. It certainly should have been well before we even got to the point of a debate in the general election. It should have happened even in the 2024, like before the 2024 primary season. But you want to talk about like the gunners in class or the straight A students, in a way, that's kind of how the entire Democratic media ecosystem operated. But let's talk about some of the other criticism that they offered. Jon Favreau went on to say that he's encouraging Democratic politicians to stop talking to their advisors and looking at the polls when Trump does something crazy. Rather, just express how they personally feel about it so it comes off as authentic, which triggered a fascinating memory for Jon Stewart about his interactions with lawmakers and their teams at The Daily Show. He said politicians were often scared to come on the show and that he'd have to sit down with their teams beforehand. Take a look.
And we would do like a panel with them. I would talk to them and they would ask questions. And they inevitably, so my boss, I'd love to have him have a successful appearance on The Daily Show. I think that would be really helpful for my boss. What's your advice on what would make a successful appearance? And I'd go, oh, well, your boss could come on the show and tell me what they think. And then what I'll do is like, I'll say what I think about what they said. And then we'll talk about that. And they'd be like, so the strategy is authenticity.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's not I'm not telling you a strategy. I'm saying just talk like a person.
Okay, so Cenk, I think the key here for Democrats is to pretend to be authentic in 2028. Is that the takeaway?
But I swear to you guys that is the takeaway. Like, I swear to God, I've seen reports of consultants telling the establishment Democrats to pretend to be populist, pretend to be authentic. I mean,
put your genuine hat on.
Yeah, when you have a consultant telling you to be authentic, that's just, it doesn't get funnier than that, right? So look, the most important thing is, yes, but what are we going to do going forward? Are we going to go back to saying, nope, you're not allowed to criticize any establishment Democrat? By the way, let's also note the hypocrisy of you're allowed to criticize Bernie Sanders all day long. You're allowed to rip his face off, call him a Bernie bro, call him anti-Semite, imply he's racist and sexist, or any other progressive or populist. Oh, Nina Turner in Cleveland, oh yeah, she said this and that, and oh, she's terrible, blah, 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 right? Attack our side 1,000 times. And if we even criticize slightly a Democratic leader or somebody in the establishment, that's it, you're banned, right? And it's not, look guys, I'm not picking on Pod Save America. Jordan's right, at least they said it the day after the debate. Others were much worse, right? And it's not personal. Like I told you before, Tom Hartman's a great guy. I like him, he's a smart guy, I appreciate him. But even he was banning people from his show who were going to criticize Biden. No, you had to bow your head to Biden. And that's a progressive. That's how deep the virus is, right? And I can name many others, Roland Martin, right? Again, I like Roland on a personal level. He's a character and we yell at each other back and forth. I'm not holding a grudge against anybody. I'm sure they will against, some of them will against me, right? But my God, if you criticize a Democrat, Roland's gonna be all over you, right? So how are we supposed to pick the best candidate if we're not allowed to criticize not just any of the candidates, but your candidates, your establishment candidates. You can criticize us all day long and rip our face off, but we're not allowed to do it to you. No. So the proof will be in the pudding. So, you want to give all of those establishment figures one more pass. But the next time we have a primary, don't come try to cancel me or others and then tell me about how you learned your lessons. Then we'll know definitively that you didn't learn anything and you're just in the propaganda business, okay? So lastly, they can start now. So what's stopping Pod Save America from talking about Rebellion PAC? What's stopping mainstream media talking about it? There's 3 great candidates. One of them is a very respected member of Congress, O'Connor. There's Richard Ojeda running in North Carolina, Randy Bryce running in Wisconsin. These are true blue Democrats, populist wing, running in red districts. So you don't have any excuse about, oh, it's a blue district. You can't criticize an incumbent Democrat. Have you learned no lessons? And in this case, you don't even have that excuse. Forget having me on. Why don't you have those candidates on? Where's all the left-wing shows who are trying to promote those candidates? I don't see a single one doing it. So what are we doing here? Is it real? Or is this just more like, oh, we promise we'll never make this mistake again. Oh yeah, we misled you on the Iraq war. Oh, I bet we won't do that again, wink, right? Come on, guys. I hope, I want to believe it. I hope it's true. But other than Jon Stewart, who was criticizing before the debate, and the people who really were, it's tough to believe them. They've got to do a lot of things to prove that they're not full of crap. By the way, of the things I talk about, Rebellion PAC or any other PAC, by the way, right? That's actually trying to help populism in the right direction for the Democratic Party. I'd like to see them be fair about all of those things. But on top of that, I'm going to ask one request. Okay, I get it. Nobody's ever going to apologize to Marianne Williamson, even though she was 100% right and she was the first one and the most courageous. And by the way, she had a higher number than. I'm blanking on, I'm so glad, Nikki Haley. I love that I forgot her name for a second. Okay, she had a higher number than Nikki Haley for most of the race, but of course, the elitist pricks on cable news, like, oh, Marianne Williamson, let's make fun of her religion. Nikki Haley, she's polling way lower. Oh, she's such a corporate goon, we love her. She's so pro-war and pro-tax cuts for the rich. Let's all hype up Nikki Haley, right? I know Marianne's never gonna get an apology. Me, that's a joke. There's no way anybody would ever apologize. Young Turks audience started a petition to get Biden out of the race in 2023. You guys were right. You're ever gonna get an apology? No way, not one of those people will ever do it. So put us aside, I know it's unrealistic. Can Dean Phillips get an apology? Can all of you that didn't have Dean Phillips on your show or mock Dean Phillips or attack Dean Phillips, a sitting US congressman who was trying to do right by the Democratic Party and the country, ran against Joe Biden in the primary? And by the way, did all of you talk about when we were all taken off of primary ballots, including a sitting congressman in places like Florida, where they just canceled the election? Is there going to be any honesty going forward? That's the main question.
Well, yeah, I think at the end of the day, the time of just going through things the way that they have is done. It's not even just that they're going to continue to lose elections, but they're not going to get any traction online. And the closer we get to, especially the main election outside of the primaries, I mean, Republican messaging has been strong, despite the fact that Donald Trump has been unpopular. He's still able to keep his ratings wherever they need to be for the general public to be like, whatever. So, I think that it's nice that the establishment Democrats want to keep on pushing forward. But like I said before, Nancy Pelosi's 84, 85. Like it's over for that. It's just done. It's my generation's time. It's Gen X and down. It's our time. And at the end of the day, who cares what they want? Let's run for office.
Yeah, and by the way, I'll say one last thing that'll absolutely outrage Democratic operatives, some of whom have media shows. Your rebuttable presumption should be to vote against incumbents in a primary. And if you're gonna be like Carville and start lying about how, oh, well, they're just running against Democrats as if they're Republicans. No, it's primaries are Democrats versus Democrats. And if you're, normally the assumption is, well, it's my incumbent, so I guess I'll vote for him again, right? No, don't do that. Assume you should vote against the Democratic incumbent in a primary, and they have to prove to you that they have been a great representative of you. And if they can prove that, great, then vote for them, they earned your vote, right? But if they can't prove that, then vote for anyone else. The incumbents have not helped at all. And to Jackson's point, Pelosi's 84 running for re-election. Clyburn's 84 running for re-election. Jesus, man, when is it enough?
I'm like a Chicago liberal, but the way things have gone, especially with like the woke stuff, and this is where I end up in this position, and so does my neighborhood. I think it's interesting to see my neighborhood reflective of my politics and vice versa.
I think the phrase I was using last year was aggressively non-common sense or uncommonsensical. And it's like I accent aggressively.
Recently, Bill Maher sat down with to have a conversation with Tim Pool, and they happened to discuss how voters currently see the Democratic Party as out of touch with average Americans. This is something that's really been developing for a few years now, but certainly after the last presidential election and the fact that a lot of blue parts of the country started to kind of shift red. Well, now it's become more comfortable environment for people to kind of speak out against some of the culture on the left that's turning voters away. Now, as we've covered extensively on the show, minority and working class voters have been abandoning the Democrats in recent elections. The party itself is polling horribly to boot. So back in March, an NBC News poll found that just over a quarter of registered voters, 27%, say they have positive views of the party, which is the party's lowest positive rating in NBC News polling dating back to 1990. Just 7% say those views are very positive. So what are Democrats doing about it? They're gathering at luxury hotels to talk about how they can throw money at the problem and attract male voters. I'm not even kidding. That's literally what they're doing. So here's one of their ideas. The prospectus for one new $20 million effort obtained by the Times aims to reverse the erosion of Democratic support among young men, especially online. Okay, great. So they've got the funds. They're going to throw money at it. Is that going to work? It is codenamed SAM, short for Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan, and promises investment to study the syntax. All right, they're going to fail. It starts with study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality in these spaces. It recommends buying advertisements in video games, among other things. Above all, we must shift from a moralizing tone, it urges. So that last part, I actually 100% agree with. I don't even think you need to throw money at that. Just stop with the moralizing, stop with the browbeating, stop with like the language policing, and stop making young men feel like they're automatically terrible people just by the nature of them being young men. And I don't know why people don't get this, Cenk, but Joe Rogan's popularity is organic. They didn't throw money at Joe Rogan to make him popular. Joe Rogan became popular on his own without a political party, manufacturing him. I don't know why they don't realize this, but the sooner they do realize it, the better.
I don't know about that, Anna. I hear that Joe Rogan has a PhD on male syntax, and that's why he's done so well. Okay, so we're gonna get into more language absurdities in a second when it comes to the Democrats, but two things on this. I can name that tune for $2 million, okay? So don't worry, Democrats, come here. I'll tell you how to speak like a dude. And you don't do it by trying to figure out how American men speak. You know you're American, right? Like, oh, they drive me crazy, man. They're so elitist, they can't see straight. So now, the moralizing tone, 100%, Anna. And I'm super curious what's gonna happen with the rest of the left, right? The left-wing hosts and stuff, because we've been against the moralizing tone for years now, and we got attacked by all the left. How dare you not use the correct terms? And there's a million examples. I'll give you one that that's kind of benign. Instead of homeless, they switched to unhoused, and I was
sometimes houseless.
Yeah,
houselessness.
I'm like, no.
Why that's better? I don't know.
It's not better.
That's what the libs like to do. They don't like to actually tackle the problem effectively. They just like to rebrand it. Like it's ridiculous.
But now that the Democratic Party and the money behind the Democratic Party is saying, okay, we're not doing moralizing anymore, we're not doing language policing, etc. I wonder how some of the hosts are gonna react. Are they gonna be super mad about that, like they were to us? Or because the Democratic leadership is saying it, they're gonna go, and then change their opinion? I don't know, we're all gonna find out together.
They'll fall in line like good boys and girls. That's what they do.
Okay, probably.
Yeah.
All right, give us more then.
All right, well, I'm gonna fast forward over to the language part of this, because if you guys can recall, Senator Alyssa Slotkin, who used to work with the CIA, says that Democrats need to stop being so weak and woke, and says that we shouldn't use words like oligarchy. You know, these Americans, these voters, they're too dumb. They don't know what oligarchy means. It sounds clunky. Stay away from that. Seems like based on the crowd sizes, a lot of Americans understand what oligarchy is. But nonetheless, she contends that her party needs to use language that comes, as she puts it, from the factory line and not the faculty lounge. Now, look, I agree with that. I actually do agree with that. I think Americans do understand what oligarchy means. I think the messaging issue here is that the faculty lounge language typically has to do with some of the social phenomenons in the country, cultural issues, when in reality right now, voters across the board are struggling economically, and they want to know what type of program the Democratic Party champions in order to make their economic woes a little better. That is what they've moved away from, and instead engage in, rebranding societal ills without actually finding real solutions for them. She said the scope of her party's challenge hit home when a voter wearing a Make America Great Again cap asked her, "What's your hat?" He was hoping for a Democratic message that could fit onto a cap, she said. And she realized there was no obvious answer. And look, that goes back to the fact that Americans don't really know what the Democratic Party even stands for. Because for almost a decade, the only thing that they have messaged about, and they've messaged about this effectively, is that they don't like Trump, Trump bad, Trump 24/7. That is the heart of their messaging. It's the heart of their campaigning. And while they focused on Trump, they forgot to maybe figure out who they are and what they represent.
Yeah, and the reason why they did that is because they don't want to actually pass any of the bills that they claim they're in favor of. So they substituted that with Trump bad, me hate Trump. The second thing they substitute with is culture wars and identity politics. Oh, they're all white supremacists and fascists, etc. And by the way, there are some white supremacists there, and I am worried about his authoritarian tendencies, but you can't substitute that for real policy and a positive message. And they're like, no, it's okay, we'll just call them racist and that'll solve it. That way we don't have to do paid family leave or higher minimum wage. Well, wrong again, Bob. The American people are not interested in your BS. And it's obvious to us now that the Democratic leadership, not the voters, but the leadership, doesn't want to pass any of these bills. They're full of crap. Go study that for $20 million. Okay, can you figure that out? And who made them full of crap? Those same donors who are like, you better not help the average American, and you better give me a tax cut, and you better deregulate my business. Now let's spend $20 million how to figure out the syntax of the American male, like we're zoologists or something. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.